Tonight, endorsements are pouring in for Vice President Kamala Harris to become the Democratic nominee now that President Joe Biden has officially stepped out of the race for president. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jennifer Meckles.
And I'm Anisha Roy. Shortly after President Biden announced that he is stepping aside, he was the first to endorse Harris to be the Democratic nominee. Biden said that Harris has his, quote, full support and endorsement. Harris released a statement of her own saying that she plans to earn and then win the nomination and do everything in her power to unite the Democratic Party. As of tonight, Kamala Harris now has the backing of Colorado's entire Democratic Congressional delegation.
Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper gave their endorsements today, and Colorado Governor Jared Polis did as well on CNN.
She's smart. She's on top of it. There's a forward-looking vision to save people money. She's put prisoners and criminals behind bars, and she's ready to lead the country.
Now, in addition to Polis, the 5 Democrats representing Colorado in the House also endorsed Harris today.
Congressman Jason Crow had previously said unless there was a major change, there was a high risk Democrats would lose the election. He is now throwing his support behind Harris as well.
She has a vision for moving this country forward, for unifying us, for protecting our rights, for bringing this country forward, not backwards. And I couldn't be more excited about her candidacy.
Even Congresswoman Diana DeGette is endorsing Harris. She is the only Democrat in Colorado's delegation who previously said that Biden should stay in the race.
Now, while Kamala Harris is not yet the Democratic nominee formally, some people are already floating names for who could be her vice presidential pick. Major media outlets like NBC News are reporting possible choices include several governors, like California's Governor Gavin Newsom, Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro, Michigan's Gretchen Whitmer, Kentucky's Andy Beshear, and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, who also endorsed Harris today.
And while endorsements are still rolling in for Harris, including a key member of the Congressional Black Caucus, others are calling for an open nomination process. This is not a done deal. The nomination process will happen at the Democratic National Convention next month. Biden had 3,900 delegates ready to vote for him to be the nominee. That includes the 72 from Colorado. Democratic state party chairs are overwhelmingly uniting behind Harris tonight. That includes here in Colorado. Colorado's chair says the state party will be planning to meet tomorrow to vote on a formal endorsement. He also said that delegates have already started discussing and showing a lot of their excitement for Harris. That is despite the challenge of changing out the candidates so close to Election Day.
Well, we certainly have our work cut out for us. The good news is the American public and Coloradans have gotten to know Kamala Harris very well over the past few years, and she's constantly delivered for us.
Anyone who wants to be nominated has to get 300 signatures from delegates, no more than 50 from a single state. Vice President Harris will be nominated, but likely others as well. And Colorado's delegates would not automatically be committed to Harris, and it would be a free-for-all until someone gets at least 1,976 delegates to vote for them. While President Biden's decision to withdraw from the race was not a surprise, it was unusual that it happened so close to an election.
9 News reporter Rachel Krause joins us now. And Rachel, you spoke with an expert and a longtime Colorado delegate who says this has happened just been a long time, like decades.
Yeah, not since 1968 has a party been without a candidate so close to an election. And we've changed how we select candidates over the decades to solidify those choices early on. Now, folks are bracing what's been proving to be an election for the history books.
I think this is an incredibly consequential, historic year.
And Polly Baca would know. She was the first Hispanic woman elected to the Colorado State Senate, and she's co-chaired 2 national Democratic conventions. She says she hasn't seen an election cycle like this one since
1968. Now that convention was incredible.
Just months after Robert Kennedy's assassination. Baca was at the convention in Chicago as a guest of the Colorado delegates, working to pick a new candidate. Now, half a century later, the Democratic National Convention will once again need to pick a candidate for president from Chicago.
I'm not quite sure how I would describe it other than this sense of deja vu. It's here we go again. But I do have faith that this will not repeat the 68 convention. I really believe that.
Elizabeth Skews with CU Boulder says this election cycle is anything but ordinary.
This is pretty much the wildest election I've seen in my lifetime.
Skews says it's odd for a major party to be without a candidate so close to an election.
Pretty unusual. You have to go back to 1968 with Lyndon Johnson. when he said in March of that year, so a few months earlier than this, that he would not run, would not accept the nomination if selected by the party. Before that, 1952, with Truman.
This time around, a Democratic candidate for president will likely be picked by the party right at the convention. We haven't done that in the U.S. since the 70s.
Oh, gosh, yes. As a matter of, and I participated in them.
At 83, Baca says she might be the oldest delegate at the convention in Chicago next month. But she says with Biden out and a woman of color now the party favorite, this DNC will be one to remember.
So it's going to be an exciting convention. It's not going to be dull.
Now, Skews tells me that they really shifted away from open conventions after 1972, following the McGovern's loss to the Democrats. And Republicans moved to the new model, too. That's the primary system where candidates collect delegates that we use now. Now, because Biden had locked up all the delegates in the primary, those will now have to be released to pick a new candidate at the DNC in August. Rachel Krause, 9 News.
All right, thanks so much for that, Rachel. Some top Republicans do not think that Joe Biden is going far enough. They are demanding that he resign the presidency as well. In a post on Truth Social, Donald Trump wrote that Biden, quote, was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve. House Speaker Mike Johnson echoed that and called on Biden to resign immediately. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell is accusing Democrats of contradicting the will of voters who chose Biden as their nominee. The 82-year-old, who is a longtime friend of Biden, has not joined GOP calls for Biden to resign before his term ends.
Some Republicans here in Colorado are planning for a shift in the strategy now that Biden's no longer the opponent at the top of the ticket. State Senator Barb Kirkmeyer represents Larimer and Weld County and is running for re-election in November.
I think it helps us even at the local level, and at the state level, because so much of our races are determined by who's at the top of the ticket. Now we're going to get back to focusing on what we should have been focusing on instead of his age and is he able to be president again in a second term and finish that term, all that kind of stuff. Now we're going to focus back on how do we make this about the border, about crime, about the cost of living. I mean, it's no longer an election about Biden's fitness. So again, it's good for the people of America, but it's also good for Republicans at this point.
We also have more developments on the race for president right now on our 9 News app and 9news.com.
Tonight, the sky seems so much calmer compared to earlier today. This is some video we got out of Centennial where you can see the hail that was coming down. Thankfully, the storms have cleared up, but our weather impact team still is tracking a couple near the metro area. Want to head over to Kathy right now. Kathy, honestly, the rain was pretty welcome. It's been so dry, so hot. I was not mad about it.
Most people enjoyed the rain. It was the hail yesterday that had people worried, and rightfully so. And then, of course, the cooler weather was really a nice treat after that heat dome of the past 2 weeks brought record high temperatures. We're still tracking a few showers tonight, some heavy over southern Colorado. We've got a warmer, drier day coming up tomorrow, and 90s are back in the extended forecast. But look at the numbers this hour. The impact of the rain on saturated soils, the cloudy skies, had brought temperatures down into the low 60s currently in Denver, and that just feels amazing. Nothing severe, but a line of showers crossing I-70. If those of you are headed east into the Flagler area, you might run into a little bit of rain and thunder and lightning there. Showers have passed the metro area now, and the flash flood warnings over El Paso County and Pueblo County have canceled out. And so temperatures will remain comfortable in the mid-60s for the next few hours. There's still a little bit to show you on the radar. We'll check that again and have that extended forecast in detail coming up.
A police officer and a suspect are recovering tonight after a shootout that happened earlier today.
Fort Collins police responded to a crash just before 1 o'clock this afternoon. And when the officers got there, they said the guy that was driving behind the crash started a shooting, led to a short chase. 9 News reporter Lauren Scafidi went to the intersection of Mountain and Bryan Avenue in Fort Collins and talked to some neighbors who watched this whole thing happen.
Just before 9, we saw a tow truck carry away that car that crashed. The car's gone, but you can still see the evidence markers on the curb here. It's these yellow arrows pointing that way. That's because parts of the tire were here while the car was back behind me. Fort Collins police say they responded to a crash at this intersection. A neighbor tells me she heard that there was an accident nearby, so she wanted to see if anyone needed help. That's when she says she saw a man get out of the car with a lot of blood on his head and a gun in his hand.
All of a sudden he stops about 75 yards down, and he turns around and he's standing there facing our direction, and he starts to bring the gun up. Now, he didn't like bring it all the way or anything, but it started coming up. So clearly he was done fiddling with it, right? And just at that moment, you hear the sirens of the police and the fire coming from two different directions.
She says she ran home, and within just a few minutes, she heard a lot of gunshots. Fort Collins police say the suspect and officers shot at each other, and then the suspect took off for Grandview Cemetery a few blocks away, where they each fired more shots. The officer who was shot is expected to recover. The suspect, who was also shot, was arrested and then taken to the hospital. We have asked the sheriff's office how they're both doing, but we haven't heard back. It's not clear how this crash happened or what may have been going on with the suspect when it happened. In Fort Collins, Lawrence Gaffiti, 9 News.